Today we are in an Airbus A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and our aircraft is parked on the apron at Avalon Airfield, which is on the Port Phillip, is it? Yeah, Port Phillip Bay, along the way from Melbourne in Australia. So we are going to do a quick circuit in the Airbus. We're going to have a go with starting the Airbus up from cold and dark, more as a kind of a aid memoir for myself more than anything, because I haven't flown the Airbus for a while. I've been flying 737s just recently, so it's going to be a bit of a journey of discovery for me as well, just to see how much I remember. Okay, so the first thing we do in the Airbus, we can see lit up over here, we have external power available. So we're going to switch on the external power, and that lights everything up over our heads. We can see we've got faults showing on Gen 1 and Gen 2, that's because the engines aren't running yet. We can see that we can switch on the fuel pumps, which we will go and do. Slightly out of order, but it doesn't really matter. So the first thing we probably want to do is go and switch on the auxiliary power. The auxiliary power unit provides electrical power to the systems around the aircraft before the engines are running. Before we do that, we would have batteries, for example, which would provide some power, but not enough for everything. So this is more of a procedure thing with this model of the Airbus in Flight Simulator, because it doesn't really model things properly. Like, you haven't got the inertial navigation, for example. The fire checks don't actually do anything. The backup radio doesn't actually do anything. The flight control power isn't all inoperative. The oxygen systems are all inoperative. It's all a bit strange, really. Anyway, so the first thing we would do is switch on the auxiliary power unit. The auxiliary power unit would provide electrical power to the systems around the airplane, and it also provides the air pressure required to start the engines. So if we switch on the master switch for the auxiliary power unit and then we tell it to start, it will take a few seconds to start, and then the lights will change to say available when it has started up. It takes a few seconds, so we'll just hang on here and listen carefully. You can usually hear it when it kicks in. So we're just waiting for the lights to change. We can hear it now, spooling up gently. And it's available. So the first thing we're going to do is switch on APU bleed. The APU bleed takes the air from the auxiliary power unit and routes it to the engines, or to be used in all sorts of systems around the aircraft actually, but it generates high pressure hot air. Okay, so as you can see, because this doesn't really simulate things properly, the GPS has come up immediately. It should normally take 6 or 7 minutes for the gyros to stabilise and for you to configure things in the FMC, or sorry, MCDU in the Airbus. It's not an FMC. There's other things that are a bit annoying as well, like in the real plane you should be able to, on the ECAM system, go and click on APU to see how much power it's generating and the temperature of its exhaust gas, things like that. So we're just going to go and start the engines. So we need to move this to start, and we'll start engine number 1. As soon as we do that, we can go and look over here. Keep an eye on it, and yeah, you can see the N2 percentage is raising. N2 is percentage of nominal of the gas turbine. So turbofan engines, there's a gas turbine. N1 is the fan speed. You will see the fan speed picking up because there is a gearbox between N2 and N1. EGT is exhaust gas temperature, so you can see the air is now coming out of the back of the engine and the temperature's raising rapidly. FOB is fuel on block, that's how much fuel we have in the aircraft, and this is a flap indicator. We get some engine fuel usage statistics down here in the stock Airbus in Flight Sim 2020. So you can see that oil quantity, PSI, fuel used. So it's not entirely useless. You get the fuel flow as well in kilograms an hour, which is, you can compare obviously against your fuel on block to see how long you're going to last before you run out of fuel. So that's that engine running. I think they've actually improved this since the first version. It didn't used to make the noises. It still shouldn't until I start the second engine, but there you go. It's various pieces of plumbing in the bowels of the aircraft doing their work. So if we go and zoom in, we can see the N2 percentage is raising. So the gas turbine on N1 is idling at 58%. The fan is idling at 19%. As soon as we hit the throttles on the runway, those will obviously raise up to 100%. You should be able to push them beyond 100%, but I'm not sure that this version will let you. So we just wait for the engines to come up. And bizarrely, that's about it for this version of the Airbus. There's not really much else to do. We need to go and switch off the auxiliary power unit now we have the engines running, because they are now generating electricity. So we can turn off the auxiliary power unit. I think that will go out on its own. We can get rid of the external power. We don't have to turn off electricity cross feeds as we would with a Boeing. It does it all for us. And that's it in terms of the actual flight systems for this version of the Airbus. Let's go and have a look at the MCDU and see what we can program then. So let's see if I can move us around in the cockpit slightly so we get a better look at it. Okay, so we are going to look at the flight plan and performance. Can we put in any useful numbers in here? We would be putting flaps. If you notice on the Airbus, flaps have numbered settings, 1, 2, 3L and so forth. We would be taking off with flaps 1 typically. So let's see if we can put that in there. Yes, it's let us. Flex temp you'd normally have to put in yourself. It's a bit unusual that that's there. Next phase, next phase. So it doesn't know anything about the flight plan yet. I'm wondering if we can program it in here. So it's saying there's a discontinuity. That's because I've not put anything in. So if we put in initialization, so we're going to put in from and to. So it's YMAV is the airport, so I'm going to put that in for both the departure and destination. YMAV/YMAV, and we'll put that in and we'll go return. So it has programmed it. It was asking us if we wanted any procedures there, I guess, on the next page, but obviously there aren't any. So we should be able to look in the flight plan. And it's just got that in there. If we insert waypoints on top of the destination, it should move down. Let's see if it works. So if we zoom in on little nav map, we can see we might want a first waypoint to be AVVSF. So let's try it and see if it will allow us to put waypoints in. AVVSF. And if we do that on top of the destination, it should insert it. And it has. It's interesting. So the next waypoint, so we'll replicate this in little nav map so we can have an idea of what we're doing. So we have set the Avalon as the departure. We've also set Avalon as the destination. So right click on it again. Okay, why is it not letting me set it as the destination? I'll do it here. Interesting. Okay, we'll just add this then. Add waypoint. We're going to add Simon next, so add waypoint Simon. And it's got them run the wrong way. You can hold Control and press the up and down arrow keys on the keyboard to move them around. So I've pressed the Control and the down arrow to move Simon down one. So let's go and put Simon in and put it on top of YMAV to see what happens. Simon. On top of that, and is it going to insert it? It's asking there are several of them, so we can look in little nav map and we can look at the information for Simon and we can see its location 38.8 468. 38.8 for, yeah, so 38.8 south, 144, 38 east. 38.8 south, 144, 38 east, so it's that one. It just took a little while to tell us where the waypoint was. So then we'll go back up here and we'll say, okay, we'll go back to Quebec. So add waypoint Quebec, and again it's got it completely in the wrong order. So we'll go control and down, down, down. So we've now got that somewhere near the right order. Quebec we need to put into here. So K-E-V-E-K, and we'll put that on top of the destination. And is it going to have more than one of it? It may be that it's gone to the next page. Yeah, so it's on the next page. Quebec. So then we will go across to Becca. So add waypoint Becca, and it's got that in the wrong order as well. It's doing really well, isn't it? So B-E-K-K-A. B-E-K-K-A. And we'll put that on top of the destination. And again, there are two of them. It's going to be the southerly one because we're in Australia. We'll just check that to make sure. So if I right click on that and show information for the waypoint, it gives us its 3748 south, 14430 east. 3748 south, 14430 east. It's that one. Okay, and then we will be landing. So I guess we can leave that alone. Now, will this version of... Should we put one more waypoint in just to make a waypoint that's in the ILS feathers? So AVVNF, add waypoint AVVNF, and it's got it in the wrong order again. So control, down, 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 and it's now done it correctly. AVVNF. So last one we're putting in, AVVNF. And we'll put that on top of the destination. And has it done it? Yes, it has. It's just it had put it in on the next page, if that makes sense. So when you can scroll this screen up and down, you have to think in terms of pushing the screen in the direction you press the arrow. So I can push and move things along. Okay. So let's go and have a look at initialization. We've filled in most of that we need to. If a field has squares in it, it means you have to fill it in. If it has dashes, you don't have to. I haven't set the actual takeoff runway or landing runway. I wonder if it will let us do it if we select from, yeah, departure. We are leaving on runway 18. So we'll say runway number 18. We're not going to use a SID. So we'll just insert. Oh, sorry, we could just say none. Except that's not working. So we go back to the flight plan. And insert. And if we were to scroll up, or we can click on destination, I guess, and arrival, and then we can choose how we are going to arrive. We are going to use ILS for runway 18. Insert. So that's pretty much the flight plan done. We can go in and program speeds and altitudes if we really want to, and if you were going to do that, then suddenly the VNAV will try to work. It won't, because it's broken in the version of X-Plane at the time of writing. So if we go and zoom out now and look at the map, we can see our flight plan. It's pretty much programmed in now. It's a bit of a lottery as to what X-Plane will do with it, but we'll see how we go. So I am going to clear the trail behind my aeroplane just in case. So we'll have a look here. So we need to be pushed back to the right, or to our right. I still can't remember how this works in the simulator. So if we go and look outside, oh, we've got a lot of people waiting for us, haven't we? So we can go to scroll lock on the keyboard, which pulls up the ATC menu, pull up ground services, tune Avalon ground, request pushback.
Avalon ground Airbus call. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo requesting pushback. Airbus call. Juliet Bravo Echo Kilo pushback request accepted.
Request pushback to the right. Let's see what happens. Does it mean our right or their right? Let's find out. Yeah, this is all nuts because you would give a plan to the pushback operator beforehand and they would execute the plan. This method of trying to tell them over the radio second hand is garbage. That truck is going to jump sideways in a moment, isn't it? Because it's not in the right place. There it goes. Okay, so it was our right. So it's now going to push us into the catering truck by the look of it. But we'll find out. Is it going to wait for that car? Or is it just going to try its luck? Okay, request pushback straight, otherwise we're going to hit the catering truck. We may even now. Oh, that's going to be close, isn't it? And he's still pushing around in a circle. The reason it's going so slow, by the way, is a bug. They should have asked us to release the wheel brakes, and they didn't. And now I've released them. Look how fast it's being pushed. So now I'll ask him to push right. So we have to wait for us to say it, and now it's too late. And now I'm having to wait before I can tell them to stop. So I'll say now. And we're still waiting. So you have to kind of anticipate what's happening. Thanks a lot, mate. Okay. Bye. So let's go and center ourselves up in the cockpit. We're not going to bother with air traffic control. We're just doing this as a sample, fly around the houses kind of mission. Okay. So first thing we do, we've already released the wheel brakes, as we saw. We're going to put the flaps to flaps 1. So if you have a look down here, I've got the buttons for the flaps mapped on my joystick. So you can see 0, 1, 2. So I've set them to flaps 1 for takeoff. And we don't have to do much around the autopilot in the Airbus. I guess we should explain this before we take off. The Airbus autopilot has a thing called managed mode. So when a dot appears next to any of the settings on the autopilot, it means it's in managed mode, in which case the aircraft will do what it thinks is the right thing. The only chance you get to really program to set it specifically is the altitude. You can set the vertical speed when you're flying as well. We'll do that during our circuit. So we can see at the moment, just out of interest, we are at 300 feet. And we've set our circuit to happen at 5,000 feet. That's absolutely fine. We're going to leave the speed on managed mode to see what it does. It should stay at 250 knots or less below transition altitude. We're going to leave the heading on latitude mode. So we'll see what that does. It should be following the flight plan because we've programmed it. If you have no flight plan, I imagine latitude mode won't exist and you'd have to just use heading hold mode. So if you can see here, if we go managed heading mode versus selected heading, the latitude button vanishes. So managed is following the flight plan. heading mode, it suddenly draws a line, it's going to follow the heading you tell it to go. So the same with speed. Selected airspeed is going to do the speed you tell it. You can use the mouse wheel to turn the knob. And then managed, and I'm clicking the top and bottom half of these buttons to make this happen, by the way. So manage speed mode. It's in the real aircraft is pushing and pulling versus top and bottom. So yeah, that should be enough. So we'll also, we'll engage auto throttle when we take off. I think engaging the autopilot engages auto throttle automatically in this version of the Airbus. So anyway, let's get cracking. So and we're rolling. Just gently go out to the runway. You have to remember how long the aeroplane is. Not go and cut the corners off and put the wheels across the grass. Okay, so we're getting there. So the runway stretched out in front of us. Just slow to a stop. Final check round. So we're going to engage the autopilot almost immediately after takeoff. We can see the radiuses are never drawn correctly in the, or certainly not yet in Flight Simulator, so I imagine we'll fly straight up to the waypoint and then make a left turn. We'll see what it does with it. It seems to be a bug in the way the waypoints work, but it may pleasantly surprise us. Let's find out. So, full throttle. $60 knots, 80 knots, 100 knots, and rotate, and we're up. Gear up.
Airbus Bravo Echo Kilo, you were not cleared to take off.
Yes, I know. So I'm pulling the engines back to speed mode. I'll explain that in a minute. I've turned the autopilot on now. So we're following the flight plan. We should be climbing to 5,000 feet on a managed climb. The throttles have taken over. Now, I was very careful about where I placed the throttle. If we look down, you'll see why. It's actually in the wrong place, so it didn't obey what it should have done. Let's have a look and see what that says. It's in climb mode, which is correct. So is it going to slow down? No, it's going to break the rules straight away. What's it going to do? That's interesting. Yeah, it's ignoring it. So I should have had to leave the throttle at that position, and that would have left it in. I'm going to have to pull it back to make it go into speed mode. So if I gently pull back on the throttles, okay, I'm going to leave it in climb mode. But it's going far too fast. Maybe it's actually taking some notice now. It should have been in speed mode. Basically, various throttle detents in the Airbus positions of the throttle mean things to the navigation system. So you can see we're kind of following. Is it going to go for Simon, or is it going to keep turning? I think they might have actually improved it. It's half attempting to follow the curve. So if I pull the throttle lever back gently, is there such a thing as speed mode? There we go. It's gone into speed mode. Rather randomly. What should happen is you should have to align this notch with this marker on the throttle, and it will enter speed mode automatically. And it's done nothing of the sort. Okay, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt and just let it get on with it. So it's doing 250 knots, which is what it should be doing below transition altitude. We're not high enough to bother changing the QNH. If we got above the transition altitude, typically you would switch this to standard, which is interesting. How have they done that in this version of it? Yeah, here we go. You just have to click on the bottom half of it, and the top half takes it back to barometric pressure with you setting it by hand. So this is the barometric pressure at ground level, which allows the autopilot to read accurately. I mean, you've got a radar altimeter as well, but it allows it to be accurate. So let's see where we are on our flight plan. So we've done the base leg. Oh, sorry, we're going along the downwind leg. We'll come along to the base leg. I want to be at about 2,500 feet when I come into the ILS feather, but we'll worry about that when we get there. That's really intriguing me about the speed mode on the throttle. That it is rather random 50% position that it's decided it will enter speed mode. It's all rather strange. Let's have a look outside anyway. It's a lovely looking simulator. So we can't see anything of the ground. We're in the clouds. It's quite a low cloud base today. There's not really much to see out here, is there? And I've forgotten to change my call sign on the... Oh, sorry, my tail number for the aircraft. So I've got a general aviation tail number, which is great. So yeah, go sightseeing in Australia. What a great view this is. But that's not really the point of this video, is it? We're doing an instrument circuit. So let's start descending so we don't have a hurry in a moment. So we're going to change the altitude we want down to 2,000. Wait, can we change this? Yeah, 2,500, and we want to come down at 500 feet per minute. I think we have to click it to make it do it. Actually no, we'll come down at 1,500, and if we click it, we have to do it first. We should see this start moving. It's thinking about it, and it's not going to. Selected altitude mode. Okay, perhaps that's just a lack of understanding on my part. So I probably need to tell it now to get there at a given rate. So while we're doing this, let's go and check the... Ooh, this looks wrong. Unless it's gone and programmed some sort of wacky holding point in automagically. Let's go and check the ILS. So if we go for nav radios, ILS 18109.5, and we've got 109.5 for 18, 177 degrees on the course, and it hasn't got that, so we'll put that in as well. 177 degrees. So as soon as we turn, what we could do to make this a bit more fun then, seeing as we think it's going to go completely crazy when it comes around this corner, because it's got some sort of programming error in the flight plan, is we'll go to managed heading mode. So selected heading mode, and we will tell it to go 280 degrees, which is more or less correct. And then when we get close to Becca, we'll turn again for 177. I'm going to put flaps to 1 because the plane is getting very slow. Yeah, it's coming down to 180 degrees. It knows it's probably going for landing, so it's guessing at the speed it needs to be at. At least we can see some ground now, though, eh? .268 degrees we actually want to be flying at. So 268. What's the wind doing? 162 degrees, 18 knots. So 162, so we're going to have quite a stiff crosswind. Okay, so we're giving up on the autopilot being able to follow a flight plan because it couldn't, basically. And we're leaving managed mode and using heading hold mode or selected heading mode. We're at 2,500 feet, which is perfect for the start of the ILS feathers. The managed speed is actually working, but we could actually take control of that as well if we wanted. So we'll say we're going to use selected speed mode. We're doing 180 knots. So when we come around the corner, we'll cut that back to 150. And we'll put some more flaps down and we'll get the gear down as well. So we're trundling along quite happily. The ground speed's 190 knots. That'll be because of that wind that's coming in. So it looks like we're going faster than we really are in terms of our indicated airspeed. Actually, no, what am I talking about? That's absolute rubbish, isn't it? It's the other way around. Actually, that makes no sense. That's saying 154 degrees magnetic for the wind. And yet this one, related to the direction we're going... Oh yeah, that is correct, yeah. So let's turn now to 176 degrees. So the Airbus seems to behave itself completely properly when it's on selected mode. It's when you're on managed mode, it has a bit of a nightmare. Yeah, look at the mess it's made of this flight plan. And you saw me program it. I just put the waypoints in, and it wasn't complicated. And it somehow got a load more waypoints from somewhere. So I think the MCDU may be a bit rubbish. Okay, so if we were to switch this now to show us ILS mode, yeah, we can see we've got the localizer. That's the horizontal. This line will move left or right, so we're slightly to the right of the center line, and we are below the ILS at the moment. Because we are below the beam, we can see we're approaching. Because we are below the beam, we should be able to engage approach mode. Whether it will work is another matter, but we'll try it. So it should bank left immediately. And there it goes. Because it's going to recenter the horizontal component of the ILS beam. Because we were off to the right, so it's turning left to intercept. And then it will turn right again in time for this to reach the center. So if we increase the range on this display, it's kind of a hybrid display. It's a shame you can't control these independently, the MFDs. So we should see when this diamond, because we're approaching the ILS beam. If you imagine there's a line in the sky in front of us descending right in front of our nose, we're approaching it. So this is how us getting closer to it, and when it reaches the middle we are on the beam. At that point you should see the nose go down. So I'm going to put the flaps down to 2. I'm going to put the gear down as well to prepare us before we even get to that point. And I'm going to start slowing us down. So 160 knots. You can see the glide slope has come up on the autopilot lock. Now, if this is simulated properly, I've just put the flaps down to 3, so we're almost full flaps. So we'll go for full flaps. I'll go for 140 knots first, and then full flaps. So if this is simulated properly, we should find that we can engage both autopilots. And we can't. So that's a bit rubbish. It should engage flare mode if we've got both autopilots. That's a shame. There's lots of things have to be just so for it to work, but yeah, oh well. So let's have a look at what's happening outside. So we're approaching the airport. So without flare mode, I doubt it's going to land smoothly. I'm going to have to disengage the autopilot when we get into the final approach and fly it by hand. I think it's going to be the only safe way to do it, because if we let it fly, it'll fly itself straight into the tarmac otherwise. Let's have a look from outside. There we are, we're approaching Avalon. Over the scenery, the local area. The weather is on real weather, so this is exactly as it is in Australia this morning. Okay, so I'm going to straighten the view up and prepare to take over. So I'll just tilt the view down slightly, zoom in slightly. So I've got the button in the center at the top of my joystick is pre-programmed to cancel the autopilot. I'm going to come off of the automatic throttle now. So I'm in control of the throttle now. Because I don't want to be playing with the auto throttle when I get to the ground. I guess in the real aircraft they take over about now, so I'm going to do that. So I'm now in control. I have throttle control, I have control of the primary flight surfaces. We're drifting ever so slightly. Getting a bit slow. We're getting below the ILS beam as well. That's interesting. Look at it floating. It's just nuts. The flight model's garbage, isn't it? I've just never seen such a bad flight model on anything. It's okay until you get near the ground. Just putting thrust reversers on. Not that we really need them, it's an enormous runway. So flaps up. Yeah, it's ever so strange the way it behaves when you get near the ground. It kind of, the aeroplane either dives for the floor, as you just saw, or it floats. So we're going to trundle back we've put the flaps up already. So yeah, it's quite frustrating, I guess, the Airbus in Flight Sim 2020. It's almost very good, and then at times you just think, oh, what have they done? So anyway, I'm going to stop the film here because you really don't want to watch me taxiing back at walking pace, do you? So let's go and stop the recording.